Good evening and welcome to the August meeting of the Plymouth Township Zoning Hearing Board. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first matter on the docket is the continuance request for 3000 Jolly Road. Is Suku John here? Come up and swear in. Get swear him in.
John.
Baylor.
J-O-H.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony that's given in this matter is true, the truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Okay, now we received a letter from you requesting a continuance on this. I'm sorry, an extension of the permit that we granted last year.
Yes, sir. When we started thinking about this project, we wanted to get 3 estimates, and we have had a very difficult time getting 3 contractors to get an estimate from. So we're currently working with the 3rd contractor and hope to have our numbers in a month, I think. That's what they tell us. The first 2 delayed by months and months and months. It was a painful process. So yeah, there is no way we're going to start. It's only been a year. So the earliest I see us starting is the spring of next year.
So if we were to grant an extension for a year, would that be enough time?
I am hoping so. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask for a longer extension.
I would not be fond myself of granting more than a year, but I just was curious what
I
your
agree.
thoughts were as to.
I believe so. I mean, I think we're pretty close to getting our 3rd set of numbers. So, and we have, our architect has started working on structural drawings. So as soon as we pick somebody, we should be ready to start applying for permits. So I thank you, but I hope that we're able to do this.
I was just expressing my own opinion. We haven't done anything as a board. Do you have any questions, Mr. Higgins?
No, no question.
Mr. Daly?
Yeah, I do. Mr. John, you're getting an addition to the house as well as a repositioning of the driveway, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct. That's
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Aprile?
No questions.
Mr. Armando?
No questions.
And I do remember, after I read the opinion from last year, that you were doing something with the driveway that I think was going to make it a safer
Yes.
entrance and exit.
Absolutely. Right now, the driveway sits right in the corner of Malvern and Kelly.
Right, it's a tough
Yeah.
driveway right now. So, anyway, I have no questions, Mr. Sanders.
No questions, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Anybody from the audience have any questions? Let's make a motion.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion regarding this request for an extension of the approval that was granted last year?
I'll move that we grant the extension of the permission from Mr. Chairman
1 year?
for 1 year. Or if it's appropriate, I mean, is it appropriate to do it just for 1 year or for 2, or just to give Mr. Johnson? I don't know.
I would think more than a year is too long. I mean,
Okay.
if you grant 2 years, then who knows,
Yeah.
he doesn't diligently pursue it. And
Right. Okay. I'll grant the extension for a year.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, let's have a vote. Mr. Higgins? In favor. Mr. Daly?
In favor.
Mr. Aprile?
In favor.
Mr. Armando?
In favor.
The chair votes in favor. Good luck with the work, and hopefully you can get the bids in and get moving quickly.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. So will we receive something? How does?
Yeah, you'll get it,
It's not a formal decision or anything, it's just a letter from you, so.
Okay, yeah, I'll send you a memo. Just stating that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
Good luck, Mr. John.
Yeah, it's got to be filed.
Okay.
The first case is 2922 Arch Road, Mark and Allison Bennett. Mr. Solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the application of Mark and Allison Bennett.
This is for a variance from section 1909, point capital E of the Plymouth Township zoning ordinance for the construction of a fence in the front yard. This property is located at 2922 Arch Road in the B as in boy residential zoning district.
Come on up. Swear in. So tell the board and the public here what it is that you'd like to do.
We'd like to extend the fence in the rear yard of the property and on the front portion that connects to our immediate neighbors. Over the past year and a half, Allison recently remarried her, and we're noticing a lot of increase in foot traffic that's been going across the rear yard, partly because we're at the intersection of Oxford and Arch is a public school bus drop-off and pickup point. And we're seeing school children that are walking across the rear yard, going through a break in the fence and going over to Henley Road. And Allison is in the home a lot, and there's kids traipsing on the lawn, which is kind of unnerving and disturbing. The other thing is there's been an increase in delivery that's been occurring on Oxford Road, both from Amazon parcels as well as FedEx, where we've had some deliveries come to the rear part of the property rather than the front door, and also walking across the rear lawn to go to our neighbor at 2920 Arch Road. And we brought it to the attention of the delivery people, and they said, you know, we're kind of walking across, it's different people all the time. And we actually called the delivery people, FedEx and they said the driver only supposed to deliver to the front, and I'll let them know and whatnot. It's happened several times, and we actually called the police officer to come out to take a report. Because
It once happened, there was a stranger during Thanksgiving. It was especially delightful. Just traipsing across our yard. And my son, who was visiting from out of state, said, "Mom, who is that person and why are they on your lawn?"
So we're just trying to curb the amount of strangers in the rear part of the property.
And what type of fence would you like to have?
Just a continuation of our neighbors. So they have a 6-foot vinyl fence, the same exact style and model, just to be continued to the half point of the rear yard and then come straight to the house. So it's not going to obscure the corner at all as far as the stop is concerned. And as far as the portion of the fence on the Arch Road side, it's just next to our neighbors, connecting to their fence at 2920. Also not going up towards the stop sign, to be stopped well before our driveway. So the entire corner, the front corner, whether it's on the Artsford or Arch, will be completely unaffected.
I do believe that the fence farther from Oxford does not require variance, because that's not in your...
That wasn't the issue. It was,
No, understood.
so the fence proposal was for 2 pieces, essentially.
Okay, understood. I was just curious, the height and the type of fence, because obviously that's important, so. Let's see. Mr. Hagan, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Daly?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your neighbors okay with this?
Both of them are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We see you're going to be running the fence, I guess, from the house, right? Not from the front yard. I know you have it's substantial, and I think that would affect. And given that you're looking for a vinyl, sort of an opaque vinyl fence, that could be an issue, a traffic issue if it were further.
It's all in the rear part of the property.
Okay, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Aprile?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to figure out what you're talking about because it's not on this diagram at all. So can you explain to me, when I'm looking at this diagram, where the streets are?
Want to approach him?
It says home. I'm just confused.
The front entrance to the home is here.
So what street's this?
This is Arch.
This is Arch.
This is Oxford.
Oxford, thank you. Okay, so now, where's the existing fence?
There is no existing fence. The existing fence is our neighbor here, coming right up to here.
So
They
there's,
have a wooden fence here. And they have
so, so it doesn't go along the road, it's
It
this
does-
way, right?
There's two fences. There's a connection here of wooden fence, it's picket, old
Right.
style. And then there's a vinyl fence that's new when this house was rebuilt after the fire damage.
Okay, so this one's illegal?
Well, I don't know if it's illegal
We'll have to
because,
check on that, okay.
I don't know. I
That's
just
been
know it's there.
That's been there for a decade.
Okay, I think the provision was done at the turn of the century, 2020, so we'll have to check.
I don't know if it's legal,
Anyway,
but it's
so
there.
you have a corner property, so this is a front yard, and this is a front yard, right?
Correct, but the corner of the street's over here. This is only the side portion of the house. There's a walk,
Just wait a minute, okay? You have Arch Road and Oxford Road, so you got a front yard here, and a front yard here. Where's the building footprint? Where's the building stop in your yard? Where's the building? It's got to be on here. Is this the building?
this is the building.
Is it home or is it this?
This is all home,
So this is your building footprint, right?
correct?
So this is your front yard. This is where the bus stop stops. This is where people stop here, people
Correct.
stop here. So they need a view,
Correct.
right? Now, where's your fence coming? It's coming on this street, which is a
Yes.
front yard. This is considered front yard. You understand that,
I
right?
do.
Okay. And then, so you want to come in your front yard, and you want to come up to where?
To the,
So you want to come halfway to your house, into your house.
it's a third of the way, the rear third.
Right, and the code is the rear building footprint, right? You're allowed to have a fence here, straight back. You're not allowed to have a fence here, you're not allowed to have a fence here.
Dom,
Oh, no, I'm sorry, it's here.
getting
It's the front
but the
footprint.
front is on both sides because they front on Oxford.
Yeah, there's a street here, so they need a.
So
variance
where
for this.
legally, he could put the fence up to here, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Whatever that front yard setback is. I forget
It's
off
Not,
the top of my
it
head.
doesn't have to do
It
with
might
this
not-
house.
The road-
It
the
might
road's
not
over
be at the
here.
house, it might be here. You know, I don't know without looking at
okay.
a to-scale plan.
And you want to put a solid 6-foot fence?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, have you considered a picket fence that could be?
absolutely not.
Okay.
I have small children, grandchildren. He's gonna have small grandchildren.
That's great.
And a dog.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We don't want to pick a fence.
You know, we look for the safety of those little children running into the street where a car is obstructed from the view because of 6-foot fences on corner properties. Do you understand that?
I do.
Okay. So you want to come down here and over here?
Correct.
Okay, no more questions.
Mr. Armando.
What's the variance part? I mean,
Fence in the front yard.
It's 1909.
More than, a fence more than 2 feet high.
Right, just
in the
because
front
it's
yard.
1909E.
In the front
And
yard.
is there any vision blocking, any making turns or traffic or any of that?
No, because the fence on the Oxford side is 2/3 of the distance back from the front of the house.
So when you pull up on Arch or Oxford, you see a clear view around the
Yeah.
corner?
Yes.
There's no further question.
That's
Substantial front.
I was just going to say, from my understanding of it, it would have helped us if there was a dimension between Oxford and where the fence is, so we could see how far back off of Oxford the proposed fence is.
my
Understand?
apologies. I didn't realize that they had sent you incomplete
Yeah,
information.
I'm just saying, so it's very difficult, and this is Mr. Aprilli's point. You can't tell how, I've been out, I saw the site. I mean, you've got, from what I can tell, a 31-foot fence going from the side of the house towards Oxford, and then we don't know how long it is between that 31 feet and Oxford itself. So we can't, without that dimension, it's a little bit difficult on us to understand how far back it is and to understand whether there's a good, clear view when you're making a turn from Oxford to Arch.
Substantial amount.
I understand, but if the plan had that
Right.
dimension on it, then we'd be able to say, hey, okay, we understand, and that was Mr. Aprilli's point.
Absolutely.
Now, having been out there, it's probably okay. I mean, rather than a picket fence, though, I think in a more appropriate fence would have been one of those estate fences where you can see through the fence, but it gives you the full coverage of a fence, meaning it's not a picket fence where people can go through. It has full coverage because we approve a lot of those fences because they give you the benefit of the security that nobody's going between because you don't have a wide gap or anything, but at the same time, people outside the fence can see into the yard, which is also a privacy. It's also a safety concern because if something's happening in the yard and you have a 6-foot fence and you can't see and you don't know what's happening. But if you have a fence that's see-through, you can see and know if there's a real problem. But at the same time, if it's a 6-foot fence, nobody's going through it any more than they would a vinyl fence. So we've approved those type of estate fences a lot in various areas in the township. When you have this unique situation of a really rear yard, it's a front yard because of how it's defined in the code. So that was just a concern. So anyway, Mr. Sander?
I know the type of fence that we're considering is also based upon cost, of course.
Understood. Mr. Sander, you have any questions?
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public who'd like to comment on this application? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to grant a variance from Plymouth Township zoning ordinance number 342 as amended, Article 19, Section 1909, capital E, to allow continuation of 6-foot privacy fence abutting neighbor fence line at property located at 2922 Arch Road in the B residential zoning district. To be done in substantial conformity with the testimony and exhibits offered at this meeting.
I know that's the other one. This does. Okay. Would you also consider adding that the township engineer approved the sight lines, since we don't have the dimensions on the plans?
Absolutely, I think that's a great idea. The township engineer should approve the sight lines.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, vote. Mr. Higgins?
In favor.
Mr. Daly?
In favor?
Mr. Aprile?
Opposed?
Mr. Ramondo?
In favor.
The chair votes in favor. Good luck. And,
Thank you.
Although I have to say, when I was a kid, I used to run through the neighbor's backyard coming up to school, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So much.
Colin Becker, 1416 Samwood Road. Bring it on down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the application of Colin Becker. Mr. Becker originally requested a special exception from Section 1908.1. It's since been determined that he requires a variance from Section 1908.1 of the Plymouth Township zoning ordinance to allow a 14-foot by 24-foot by 11-foot shed, where the maximum shed size is 12 feet by 12 feet. Property is located at 1416 Sandwood Road in the C residential zoning district.
Colin Becker, C-O-L-I-N,
Mr. Becker, would you like to explain to the board and the public what it is you would like to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everybody. So the gist of it is, my girlfriend and I just bought the house about a year and a few months ago. With work from home, we're both just kind of cramped in the house in terms of I had to also make an office inside of our home. The reason we're requesting the bigger shed than the 12 by 12 by 12 is we need it for one, storage, but for two, primarily, I have rheumatoid arthritis, so I need a space to do physical therapy. It needs to be generally big space. I have a few different machines that I work off of based off of just protocols that I go over with my doctor and different physical therapy, exercises that I can do throughout my week just to make sure that everything can, work appropriately with my body. So that's basically the gist of why we're asking for a variance today.
Any questions? Mr. Higgins?
Will this shed have electricity?
No, sir. None of the machines that I use require electricity.
Okay, that's all.
Mr. Daly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What exactly are the dimensions? I see 14 by 24 by 11, which is Is that height by width by depth?
Yeah, height is 11, the width would be 24, or the length would be 24, sorry, the width would be 14.
And you, there already is another shed on the property, correct?
That will be coming down, yeah. That currently houses my tractor
Okay.
and my different lawn equipment that will be going into the new.
Oh, okay, all right. Your neighbors okay with this?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any further questions, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Aprilli?
No questions.
Mr. Armando?
No questions, thank you.
I have a question, because you said you won't have utilities, but in the middle of January, have any heat or anything in there?
Yeah, so that will be a challenge, but I did grow up in Northeast Philadelphia with a similar setup. We didn't have too much money growing up, so we had to do the same thing in a shed that we had in our backyard in Northeast Philadelphia. I got through it then, I'm gonna have to get through it now.
And
Rough and tumble.
It helps the joints.
this is purely for your personal use,
Yes, yeah.
not running a business?
No, sir.
I have nothing further, Mr. Sanders.
Yeah, my questions, to follow up on the chairman's questions. No commercial use out of the shed, and no residential use of the shed?
Absolutely.
You're going to put it, okay. Because those will be conditions if the board approves, and we just want to get that on the record.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anyone from the public who'd like to comment on this application? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chairman, to grant a special exception from Plymouth Township zoning ordinance number 342 as amended, Article 19, Section 1908.1, to build a 14-foot by 24-foot by 11-foot shed where maximum size of 12 feet by 12 feet is allowed. The property located at 1416 Sandwood Road in the C residential zoning district, be done in substantial conformity with the testimony and evidence presented at this hearing. The shed is to be for personal use, no commercial or residential use.
And it's not a special exception, it's a variance, as
Right.
our solicitor said at the beginning of the hearing, so.
Okay, like I amend that then to a variance. Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Higgins?
In favor.
Mr. Daly?
In favor.
Mr. Aprile?
In favor.
Mr. Armando?
In favor.
The chair votes in favor. Good luck, and hopefully, we'll have a warm winter for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last regular scheduled matter is 100 Alexander Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the application of Rachel Ingber, I-N-G-B-E-R. It's also, the application is filled out by First State Building and Design. I assume that Ms. Ingber is the owner. This is a variance request from Section 1909E, capital E, of the Plymouth Township zoning ordinance to allow a fence in the front yard of the property located at 100 Alexander Drive in Plymouth Meeting. This is zoned A, residential district.
How you doing? I'm Charles Carroll. I'm representing Rachel and the builder.
Charles.
Carroll, J-A-R-R-E-L.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right, and you're obviously not the owner.
Right. They're not available this week. They're away, but they have an infant child and also a baby in diapers. So their work is kind of chaos. I built a nice relationship with them, and I wanted to help them out in the process. So I told them I'd represent for them if I can. They just want to bring the fence up, pretty much match where their neighbors are, where they stop. I believe it's like 2 feet off the sidewalk. But that Plymouth Road there it is their backyard, but I guess technically it's a front yard because it's a main road. And they are a corner lot, so I suggest maybe going down towards the side on like a 45-degree angle to get like 10 feet off of that sidewalk for more visual. And they were happy with that. And it is a 6-foot white vinyl privacy, and there are, I believe, like 4 on that road already. They're course, it's not a corner lot, but theirs is.
Is this triple frontage?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Well, double.
it's Plymouth Road, Alexander Drive, and then Alexander Drive. Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, it's in the neighborhood.
I'm sorry, so it's,
Three
this is the
front
front.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess it's 3 front yards.
But it also, the backyard, back in quotes, it borders Plymouth Road.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just trying to get the lay of the land here and figure out what we're looking at. Okay.
All right. Mr. Higgins, you have any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Daly?
Yeah, are the neighbors okay with this?
Yes, actually, I'm giving a quote to one of their neighbors. So now I know what to do.
Okay.
So,
I should thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to ask questions. This is why have they chosen a 6-foot vinyl fence running all the way down to the sidewalk? That's kind of, it's opaque and it could potentially block drivers' views at that intersection.
They like the privacy, and with the 2 little ones, and I guess their friend, I think it's probably about 7 houses down, have the white vinyl 6-foot privacy. They really like the look. We built the porch for them, but I was concerned about the visual because I've been doing this for a while, and that's why I decided to kind of angle it out. So when you're driving down that road, I think it's going to be pretty safe, obviously.
Are there a lot of young kids in that neighborhood, do you know?
I'm starting to see quite a few. I'm in there a lot now, so yeah.
Yeah,
They seem to be like teenagers. I think the Embers are really got the young ones.
Yeah, I've been through there various times during the day since construction started.
Yeah.
Mostly I see teenagers, things like that.
It's a beautiful
Kids who might be
neighborhood.
driving. I don't have any further questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Armando? I'm sorry, Mr. Aprile.
Thank you. How far off the sidewalks are you?
Well, right now, I believe the neighbors is 2 feet, I believe.
We're
I'm
not
not-
neighbors. What are you?
I want to go as wherever you guys will allow it.
But this isn't
So
a
I'm not,
sidewalk.
I got it proposed for 2 feet off the sidewalk,
Off the sidewalk, not the
don't
curb,
have a
off the inside sidewalk.
off the inside side.
Okay.
This
Aren't
Plymouth Road
most of the
side.
fences in there, the black rail?
Some are. Her exact neighbor is, and there's probably 3 or 4, but I've seen their 6-foot light privacy.
And aesthetically, they think white vinyl is going to match with black iron.
Yeah, I mean, her neighbor actually, it's 2 houses down, so I say it's a neighbor. The way that her next door neighbor's lot's laid out is kind of weird, and she wanted a quote from me for white vinyl privacy as well. So,
Okay.
I mean, I personally like the black wrought iron look, but she wants the privacy because we just built the porch for them too. So, which, by the way, obviously we had a permit for. So,
Are they both four-way stop signs?
no, I don't believe so.
Not on Plymouth Road. There's no stop sign on Plymouth Road if you're on
Right.
Plymouth Road.
Right, it's just coming out. And then the other way? Alexander Drive? and
Yeah, there's a stop
Alexander-
That's in the
there.
neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to cut it on a 45 to get that visual on the stop sign.
So you're doing 245s or just 145?
Just one.
Off of Plymouth Road,
Correct.
and you're 2 feet off the sidewalk?
Correct.
Okay. No more questions, thank you.
Thank you.
So directly next door doesn't have a fence yet,
Not yet.
but the one on the next one does.
Yes.
So you're going to try to take that line
Correct.
and then probably come back for the other neighbor.
Yeah, and try to match it up, but I apply for a variance again.
Kind of have to. You kind of have to match it up. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
it would look kind of silly.
And that one 2 houses away is 2 feet off. Do you think? Is that-
I believe it's roughly 2 feet. It might be a little bit less. It might be like 18 inches, maybe even a foot.
And I guess we can put in this one too, according to engineer approval with visual, as far as safe turning, sight lines. That's the concern.
Would you like me to mark it out, paint it off, or it just he'd go off the plot?
As long as it's safe, you know what I mean. You just want to be able to pull up to that corner and not be like, oh my God, I got to keep edging out another 8 feet to see.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought about.
So that's the only thing. No further questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
I second Mr. Aprile's comments about the type of fence. Most of the fences we've approved are not the privacy fences.
Right.
Privacy fences that have been approved are generally in, they're not on a corner like this. They're certainly not on one that has 3 frontages, as the solicitor pointed out. I see no reason to have a fence so close to the sidewalk on Alexander Drive. It just doesn't seem to make any sense to me. I haven't heard any good reason why you would want to have it that close to Alexander Drive.
Well, their back lot is kind of, the grade is very hilly. They just wanted to get as much as they could because they're trying to, get as much ground as they can safely for kids to play with, and to leave less maintenance, obviously, in the back.
Well, this is the side, not the back.
Right.
This is
Well,
Alexander
side.
Drive, this is not Plymouth Road. I'm talking about Alexander
Oh, on
Drive.
Alexander Drive, yeah, that part, I mean.
It just doesn't make any sense to me to have the fence, a big wall hulking fence like that you can't see through. It's really uninviting if you're a pedestrian walking down the street.
Right.
If you live over here and your kid's coming home from Plymouth Elementary, you're gonna have to walk by that 68-foot of blank wall that's right up against the sidewalk.
And those kids are walking across there, I think that's
I know
what
they
they
are.
said, they didn't want to see the kids. Pull
Well,
that-
you know that you buy a house across the street from a school. I
Yeah.
don't think you have a reasonable expectation. I think you would have a reasonable expectation to have kids walking from the school past your backyard. And I just think that the iron fences are much better. They provide you all the safety of this fence, and they're not so uninviting when you walk past. You can't even have plantings because you don't have enough room here. So I just...
I mean, we could pull, I'm sure she wouldn't oppose pulling that in off of Alexander. I know her main concern was the back up against Kennett, or Plymouth.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, it seems to me that most of the vinyl fences that we've approved in that area are the ones that run along Plymouth Road, like not on corner properties.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because they back up to the main
Right.
busy road.
Exactly.
Alexander Drive is not Plymouth Road, it doesn't have the traffic, it's in the neighborhood, and this fence is right up against the sidewalk, so
Yes.
and that's before you get to the issue of whether there's proper sight lines and everything else as you come up to Plymouth Road. So, anyway, I have no further questions. Mr. Sander?
I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public who'd like to speak with respect to this application? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I'm loath to make a motion for this particular type of fencing in that area, so I'm not sure how that been framed.
What? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of loath to make a motion to approve this kind of fencing in that.
You can make a motion to oppose it. I mean, you know.
Will she move back to the building footprint off of Alexander Drive
Meaning,
instead of
no, that's
to the
that was
curb?
on Alexander Drive? Yeah,
The true front of the house,
Right, I believe she would, yeah,
and 2 foot off the sidewalk,
on the back part.
and on
He's talking about
On
moving
Plymouth.
this from here all...
On Plymouth and on this other road.
Moving this line all
To
the
Street
way
Road.
in
Getting that, it
here.
would just be here.
right Alexander Drive and the back,
Right.
and then it would stop at the front building footprint.
You're talking about putting it here,
I
right?
just want to make sure you know what you may be agreeing to here. You're talking about moving this fence line right here all the way in to here to make it
Oh, all the
even
way into
with the
there.
house.
Yeah.
That's what Mr. Aprilli is
Right.
proposing, I believe. Can you move it even with the house? Meaning, why is it so close to Alexander Drive on what is sort of the side yard?
Right. Yeah, they
all-
wanted
all
to
this-
encompass it, I guess.
all
as
this
much.
room.
Right. I mean, would we have to go all the way to there? I mean, maybe instead of 40 foot out, a foot off the sidewalk, could we come in?
It's Mr. Aprilli's suggestion and motion. Well,
Would
not
it-
motion, but suggestion.
We
We don't have a motion.
Right, that's right.
So this is the front of the house, right?
Taking, just coming off straight here on the corner?
Let's see, where are the streets here? Yes, right. Here, and then 2 feet off, and then 2 feet off, right? Is that
Well,
right?
this is a side yard, there's no road here.
Oh, I got it going the wrong way.
Yeah, no, you're right.
This is Plymouth Road, no.
This is the corner we're worried about.
Yeah,
It's that to the line.
yeah, here's the fence, the drawn out part.
So would it be here
No.
to there?
Don. You want to go like this. Because this is the two roads. You want this to come off the house out that way.
Yeah, where's the front door? Here.
Yeah.
They wanted to come all the way around the front.
No. This part, they're considering the front, because Plymouth Road.
So they're only coming back here.
Yeah, they wanted to go across.
Okay, so the back footprint.
Yeah.
This is what you would propose, so that you get the room off of Alexander Drive.
Right.
So you would propose the fence to go like that, like that.
This is Plymouth, this is the neighbor.
Right, this is Alexander.
Okay.
You propose pushing it back 40 feet off of Alexander so that you have the sight lines and no problems coming on the Plymouth Road. Because that's 40 feet.
Well, isn't this a fence here?
Right.
Proposal?
You would propose taking that out, because this was the fence. You would propose moving the fence here and just having it in the backyard,
But then that would
so that we don't have a problem with the vision off of Alexander Drive.
But this is where it's angled,
Yeah,
Yes.
that's why I wanted
and
that.
this is 2 foot.
All the way down to here.
Yeah, but I don't want to come down, I want to stop here.
Right, but I thought you would also had it going this way.
No. I
Because
thought
the
this is
concern
okay,
was the turn off of Plymouth Road.
But he took care of it with this angle.
Okay.
Right.
Do you want to have the engineer make sure that works?
I, again, thought that...
That was my thought.
But I thought that coming up to Alexander Drive, if they're going to insist on this blank wall of a fence, should be set back from Alexander Drive. More than 2 feet.
Oh, more than 2 feet, okay.
Like, I mean, would anybody be opposed, instead of going 40 foot out, a foot off or 2 feet off, we bring it 20 foot out and then work our way?
So it would be half.
So now we're talking about this.
Yeah.
And you probably don't even need the angle.
No, I think you probably still would.
Okay.
A little bit.
Yeah, I would like to angle it just a little bit. I'd feel better with someone coming up here and not, obviously they got a stop sign, but you never know.
They don't have a stop sign on Plymouth Road.
No,
these
that's what I'm
guys are
saying. I'm
doing
talking about
40
here. You can
miles an
find,
hour.
right. I'm talking about here. I want them to be able to see traffic coming.
Okay.
Do you want to make a motion, Mr. Daly, or?
So is that would be 40 feet off, 40 feet, or 20 feet, sorry, 20 feet from the house. Let's see what we can do with this. Okay, I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to grant a variance from Plymouth Township zoning ordinance number 342 as amended Article 19, Section 1909, point capital E, to install fencing no further than 20 feet from the house at Plymouth Road, which is considered a front yard. Actually, no, it should actually be, wouldn't it be no further than 20 feet from the house on
Alexander Drive.
Alexander Drive,
Yeah.
which is considered a front yard. Property is located at 100 Alexander Drive in the A residential zoning district, in substantial conformity with the testimony and exhibits offered at this meeting, and I assume the township engineer to approve the sight lines.
Correct.
I second.
Let's have a vote. Mr. Higgins?
In favor.
Mr. Daly?
In favor.
Mr. Aprile?
In favor.
Mr. Armando?
In favor.
Chair votes no.
Yep, it makes total sense. I mean, honestly, it really does.
Good luck.
So, thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. Great night. Thank you.
Let me just. Yeah, you, Michael, thank you. You're about to. You take care.
Good night, guys.
Take it easy.
See my
Want to bump down, or how do you want to do this?
Sure. I really didn't understand that first.
Bring in the movers.
And then his wife pissed me off.
There's already fences there, so we kind of spot, you know what I mean? We let other people get away with it. That's my only problem. I'm not in love with it either.
How do we, like, police it? I'll show you.
Don't minimize your.
These guys are spending $800,000 on these houses that need fences. Like, what are you gonna do?
I'm talking about the first guy.
He was fine.
Right.
But I couldn't tell from the
Oh, no, the Germans were horrible. They didn't give you any information. But what he wanted to do is to...
Would you like to get this to say? You have a particular place for the chair?
Last time he had tables like this.
You can bring them, you can move them up a little, you can move them up.
Yeah. Whatever makes you comfortable.
I have a kids and a dog. It's like, I'm showing you the, I got neighbors. My neighbor was constantly.
Kids, $800,000 houses on 2 busy roads. Like, it's insane. There's no way to please them. It's almost like they should have just built with the fence. Okay.
My neighbor was a little kid.
Bed, absolutely. I don't know. I don't know. He's old enough to have been in the military. I have no idea. Guessing, Mark Kemp, I guess no. He has a strong, he used the college exemption or the something, you know. I'm just too short and, you know, yeah, something. There was an exemption. But I say that a lot. I gotta hit the head. It's gotta hit the head.
Just make sure I can hear you, so.
That's a big
Pretty far right.
I'll try. You never know.
Just make sure I
But
can hear
I'm
you.
down.
He was the coxman for the...
There you go. There you go. That's right. That's much more like
Just make sure I can hear you. You're a ways.
You got it. The mocking the witness. If anybody does on camera, Peter or I have any trouble
Believe it or not, it's harder to hear on the set.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
I thought you'd have like, you know, some reverberation in that little stone corner. I think I'll see you next month at Lower Providence.
You're back again? That's I live there, my township too.
At least it's not a long drive.
What's that?
At least it's not a long drive.
No, very cool.
Oh, that's pretty nice. That's right in my folder.
We're open
No
next,
fence.
we're open for next
Next year.
the whole police are working for job training.
Really?
Because, they ripped off the roof and asbestos license.
So what are we doing tonight?
tonight. These guys.
No, he gets to go too, and then he doesn't have all his people that he wanted to. The sewer guy's not ready. The sewer numbers. Right.
You're a sewer guy?
No, I'm a
You're
lawyer.
Well, what's the difference?
Specializes in sewer.
Be honest.
Line here.
We're
Lay
going
it
to
right
call 100
out there.
lawyers at the bottom of the sewer. Good start. Boom, boom. I'm here all week. Thank you.
Until they need us.
That's exactly.
At least we agreed on something tonight.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we concluded hearing number 2 in this matter on July 17th, 2023. We heard last from the applicant's witness, Mr. Robert Campbell, and after Mr. Campbell's testimony was completed, we continued the hearing until this evening. So I guess we're back to Mr. Kaplan. Any further witnesses, Mr. Kaplan? Mr. Kaplan, no further witnesses at this time. Mr. Musso.
Yes, I have one witness for tonight, and then I'll have another witness at our next hearing. Tonight, we plan on putting Mr. Kenneth Amy on as a zoning and planning expert, and then next time we'll have our sewer expert. We had hoped to put them on tonight, but they've now received updated flow information from the Keystone Building Project that they think is relevant to their analysis here, and they had just received it, and they won't have it, their analysis ready in time for tonight. They will have it and ready for the next hearing, and we'll certainly, we haven't done that yet, right? So I'll follow up with Mr. Mason, and as soon as we get it, I'll email it to Mr. Cowell. But that's our plan. Tonight, of course, tonight,
Okay.
Mr. Amy, and next month, our sewer expert, and then that should be it for us. We just plan on putting 2 weeks.
Okay. I will let you know, obviously, we're going to have to continue this after this evening's witness. And there are issues with September 18th, which is the regular date. The board may be able to have a quorum to do other business, but not to hear this case. And I can't be here, and I wanted to retain the continuity that I had sitting with the board on this case. So we're going to have to get and think about dates probably into October. Our zoning officer suggested that a way that everybody can put in the dates that they're available. How is that, Joel?
Yeah, I think it's called Doodle. I'll have one of the secretaries do it.
Linda does it.
Yeah.
Linda uses it.
Put everybody's email in it, pick a day, and pick a bunch of days, and then I'll spit out one day.
What are you thinking about? Does anybody have any
Is
thoughts?
October's date too
Well,
late?
the regular date in October, I'm probably not going to be able to be here. I have a curative amendment that's being heard in another township, but I've got to sit with that.
I think she already sent it. No.
Really?
What's this? It's the doodle from Linda. I think that was from, a meeting. Oh, was the other one? Okay. That's what I got to rely on for.
Well, let's go. We don't need all this on the record. Let's go off the record. And if we're going to talk about dates, I don't know. I know that there were some members of the zoning hearing board that were not going to be available until October at the earliest, and I'm not sure what everybody's availability is. Do you want to? What we can do is tonight we can continue it to September 18th, and between now and September 18th come up with another date and have the board that's sitting on September 18th continue it to whatever date we choose. Does that make sense?
It's fine for the township.
Does that make sense, Mr. Kaplan?
Yeah, I am gone from Saturday the 21st until the end. I'm just looking to see.
So we need something during,
Something before the 21st. I've got 3 hearings before 4 hearings already, no, 3 hearings already scheduled, so.
Well, we may have to,
Just don't go past the 21st and we'll figure it out.
right. Okay. But it's acceptable, let's go back on the record for this. Is it acceptable for the applicant and the township to continue this matter after tonight's hearing to September 18th and to allow the members of the zoning hearing board then sitting at the September 18th meeting to continue this case until a date that we will have chosen by then in October? Does that work, Mr. Kaplan?
Okay with me.
Okay with the township.
Mr. Musso, okay, thank you very much. All right, so that's what we'll do.
And you don't need us here on
September 18th, no. No, okay, that's what we'll do. Okay, housekeeping aside, Mr. Musso.
Thank you. The township calls Kenneth Amy to testify.
State full name for the record and spell it.
Kenneth Amy, A-M-E-Y.
Raise your right hand, please. Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about giving this matter truth and truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
And I'd like to present to the board Township Exhibit 1, which is the CV of Mr. Amy provided.
Can I stipulate, or do you want to put stuff on the record?
If you'll stipulate that he's a planning and zoning expert, that's fine with me.
I guess he's been for the 40 years I know him, so I guess he still is. I have no objection again.
Planning and zoning.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan.
He will be accepted, being known to the board, he will be accepted as such.
Thank you. And I'd ask that Township Exhibit 1 be entered into evidence.
That'll be accepted.
So, Mr. Amy, I will now turn to what is the applicant's Exhibit 2.
I have
You
a
have it
copy
there?
of your exhibit book, so I can turn it a little bit.
So, turning to Township applicant Exhibit, 2. Are you familiar with Exhibit 2?
Yes, I am.
What is Exhibit 2?
Exhibit 2 is a copy of ordinance number 1686, which was adopted by Plymouth Township on the 14th of November, 2022.
And how are you familiar with this document?
I was involved in some of the changes that were made to this document once it was presented to the township.
So you actually helped draft this document?
I helped make some amendments to the original draft, yes.
Okay. Who wrote the original draft?
The original draft was prepared by representatives of Keystone. Their attorney was Robert Gunlock, and someone in his office, I believe, put the original draft together.
And I believe there's been testimony about it, everyone's familiar, but Keystone, you're referring to another project within the shopping center district of a high-rise apartment.
Keystone owns the high-rise existing office building.
So they wrote the original draft of Exhibit 2.
Yes, they did.
But you helped to revise it before it was passed by council.
Correct.
All right. And the Township Council has now passed Ordinance 1686.
As of last November.
All right. So it's now part of the zoning code of the township.
Yes.
All right. I'll turn to page 2. So you'll see it says section 200, and it adds the definition of a high-rise apartment house. Is that correct?
That's correct. The existing ordinance contained the definition for apartment house. It also contained the definition for mid-rise apartment house. But there was no definition for high-rise apartment house. So this just mirrors the language in the other definitions, but reads high-rise apartment house, just to be consistent.
I'll mark as Township Exhibit 2.
Sure.
familiar with Township Exhibit 2?
Yes, I am. That is the existing definition of mid-rise apartment house, which has been in the ordinance for quite some time.
Okay. So, when the zoning code talks about mid-rise apartment house, this is what it means.
Correct.
An apartment house containing 3, 4, or 5 habitable stories that may be offered for sale or rent.
That's correct.
Okay. And what's the difference between a mid-rise and a high-rise?
A high-rise apartment building would contain 6 or more habitable stories.
Okay. So it's just a matter of how many stories?
Correct.
If it's 3, 4, 5, it's a mid-rise. If it's 6 or more, it's a high-rise.
Correct. I suppose there had to be some kind of cutoff, and that's the cutoff that the township chose.
Got it. All right. Now we'll go down to section 11. It says, section 11 of the zoning ordinance is hereby amended to add a new subsection 1100Q. First of all, what's section 1100 do in the zone?
Section 1100 is the use provisions of the shopping center district.
All right. And what we're talking about here is the shopping center.
That's correct. Chapter 11 in the ordinance is the shopping center.
But the application for the zoning hearing board is something that somebody wants to do within the shopping center district.
Correct.
All right. So section this adds a Q. And what does section Q do?
I'm sorry. You're in section 1100, not article 11. I'm
Yep.
with you.
Okay.
I got confused, I'm sorry.
Section 1100 of the ordinance.
Yeah.
All right. So what this new Q? What does this new Q do?
It adds mid-rise apartments and high-rise apartments as permitted uses within the shopping center district.
All right. So before you couldn't build apartment buildings in the shopping center district.
Correct.
And now with this new ordinance that council has passed, you can.
Correct. There were no apartment uses permitted in the shopping center district prior.
All right. And I'm sorry. When did this pass?
It passed in November of last year.
Okay. So this was. I know you testified in the previous pre-application. This was after that last application we were all here about, correct?
Yes, it was after the Freed application, which is currently in litigation.
Commonwealth Court. Yes. All right. So the council has now added mid-rise apartments and high-rise apartments in the shopping center district.
Correct.
All right. Now what's the rest of Q do?
Well, the rest of Q contains conditions for those uses within the shopping center district, and goes on to say there are two sections. One is that it be located in an existing building previously or currently used for office purposes, being converted into mid-rise or high-rise apartments. And then the second section of that condition would be authorized as a conditional use.
So I want to back up for a second. You said that the people who own the Keystone building originally wrote this, but then you revised it. As somebody who helped to revise it, does this ordinance, was it meant to only apply to that former office building owned by Keystone, right next to the mall?
Objection.
We'll allow it.
How does he know?
He took part in drafting the ordinance.
So that you can answer the question.
It was meant to provide for apartment use within the high-rise office building owned by Keystone, but also provide for another location within the shopping center district and a number of units in excess of what Keystone was looking for,
What other
which could be
locations?
applied for another property.
What other location within the shopping center district?
Well, the other location that we discussed during the drafting of this ordinance was the IKEA office building.
The old IKEA office building?
The old IKEA office building, which is the subject of this hearing.
So either of those you could build mid-rise or high-rise apartments?
Correct.
Okay, so but either use there's certain conditions set out, correct?
Yes, there are.
So what are the conditions that are set out?
Well, the conditions included in section 1100Q are the two that I just read. One is that it be an existing building
previously or currently used for office purposes, which is being converted into mid-rise or high-rise apartments. And the second is that it be authorized as a conditional use.
And then are there other requirements to build a mid-rise or high-rise apartment building in the shopping center district?
There are development requirements contained in section 1101.2 of the ordinance, which was also added by ordinance 1686, and that contains specific development requirements for mid-rise apartments and high-rise apartments in the shopping center district.
Give me that section again, Ken.
1101.2.
And that's added here by ordinance 1686.
Yes.
It looks like, can I just clarify, 1101L2, point capital L.2, or I'm skipping over that and just going straight to 1101.2, development requirements for mid-rise and high-rise apartments in the shopping
We
center.
need to direct your attention to 1101.2.
Okay, I apologize. Thank you.
All right, so you've sat through the hearings on this application, correct?
I did not sit through the hearing when council adopted.
No. I'm sorry.
Are you talking
the hearings in front of this body on this application? Sorry, too many.
Yes, I was here for the hearings in May and also in July.
All right, and you've reviewed the application before.
I have reviewed the application and the exhibit book prepared by Mr. Kaplan.
Okay. And this application itself purports to build a mid-rise apartment development, correct?
Yes, it does.
All right. So let's go through the conditions to build a mid-rise apartment in the shopping center district. The first condition is that it has to be being converted. I guess an existing building previously currently used for office purposes being converted. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is this project before you? Does this meet this condition?
No, the project that's being proposed by CREEP as part of this application does not meet that condition. It proposes to remove and replace the existing IKEA office building.
And the second condition that it's authorized as a conditional use. They haven't applied for it.
I'm sorry, what system is that?
Sure. So section Q2, the second condition is that it has to be authorized as a conditional use. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. And they haven't applied for a conditional use.
Not to my knowledge.
All right. Then if I could direct your attention to these development requirements for a mid-rise apartment building in the shopping center district. The first requirement is 1101.2A, the minimum district area. Do you know if they meet that requirement?
Yes, that section requires the property or the district within which it would be located to be at least 50 acres, and the subject property satisfies that requirement.
Do they meet? B has a requirement for setbacks, has to be so far 100 feet from the boundary of the shopping center district and 75 feet from the ultimate right-of-way of any street. Do you know if it meets those requirements?
The testimony from Mr. Oleznikov is that it does meet those setback requirements. I haven't seen a full-size copy of the plan, so I haven't independently verified it, but his testimony was that it meets the requirements.
So then there's a requirement for project density. Do you know if it meets the requirements for project density?
Well, it would not meet the requirements of project density as it's currently presented in that section, 1101.2C, requires that no mid-rise apartment building contain more than 50 units.
And how many units are they applying for?
300.
So it does not meet project density. It's more dense than the requirements.
It's more units.
Okay. How about D, shopping center district density? It says, so that's 150 units on any property subject to redevelopment and a maximum of 300 apartment units within the shopping center district. And then it goes on to talk about if there's multiple applications before the township, which if granted would exceed the 300 unit maximum, the applications will be considered in the order in which preliminary approval is granted. I guess let's say, let's start with this. If there was no other applications out there, and would they meet the shopping center district density, or would they?
Well, the 300 units proposed would meet that in that there are no other applications that have achieved preliminary approval at this point. And there is a cap at 300 units, which is what's being proposed in this application.
And is there any other application pending out there that you know of?
The Keystone application, I believe, is still in the conditional use process, so there is no preliminary approval at this point.
How many units are they trying to
They're proposing 150 units.
But that has not yet been granted preliminary.
Not as far as I know.
For E, for building spacing, I mean, does it meet the building spacing requirements here?
Well, there's only one building being proposed, although it exceeds the number of units that are allowed in subsection C. We already talked about, but there is only one building proposed, so there is no setback between buildings that would be applicable.
How about parking, F? Do they meet the parking requirements?
Yes, the testimony from Mr. Leventhal is that the parking will meet the requirement of 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit.
How about G, amenity space? It has all kinds of requirements for what the kids want these days, fire pits, dog walking areas.
It appears that the amenity space requirement is met by this application, yes.
How about the unit mix? Does it have the right, a unit mix that meets the requirements of the zoning code?
Yes, it does.
How about a transportation impact study? Where they have a
There was
transportation.
a traffic study prepared by McMahon Associates, and there was testimony from Joe DeSantis last month regarding that traffic study.
Did it meet these requirements under the zoning?
Not being a traffic engineer, it appears that it meets these requirements. My only comment on the traffic study would be that Mr. DeSantis was asked a question by one of the board members as to whether the traffic counts included full occupancy of the mall property. And he said that it was based on current occupancy, not full occupancy.
From a planning perspective,
From a planning perspective, I would be interested in knowing what the full occupancy numbers would be as opposed to what's currently occupied. There could be tenants filling the balance of that property at any time, which would contribute additional traffic.
So because the township obviously can't control who rents space in the mall, so if somebody suddenly rents all these empty stores.
Once the spaces are approved, they could be leased at any time.
All right, well, subject to that caveat that it didn't use full occupancy, but they've submitted some kind of transportation impact study.
Yes, they did.
How about a fiscal impact study?
I have not seen a fiscal impact study.
How about a sanitary sewer study?
Yes, there was testimony from, I believe, Mr. Campbell last month regarding the sanitary sewer.
How about this buffering and berming requirement?
Well, the parking section of the zoning ordinance contains specific buffering and berming requirements for parking lots. This ordinance, 1686, exempts properties that are being redeveloped for the mid-rise and high-rise office use from those requirements, so that there's not additional berming required within a shopping center for those uses.
But I believe you testified this is not a conversion, correct?
What's being proposed with this application is not a conversion, it's a new building.
So it would have to meet the buffer requirements and the berming requirements.
Well, the exception contained in L would not apply.
Have you seen any buffering or berming plans?
No.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that question and answer?
Yeah, I'm confused as well.
Sure. So we're talking about section L, buffering and berming. And I'm not sure which question you wanted me to. So I guess we'll do it like this.
But Peter, I think you asked him, does this application comply with the buffering and berming? And that's what I wasn't sure.
I did ask that, and what's your answer to that?
Well, there's nothing shown on the application that would show compliance. Because I don't believe the plans have been developed at the point that that compliance would be shown.
All right. So the applicant wants to build a mid-rise apartment building, correct?
Correct.
All right, and that is now permitted to do in the shopping center district.
Yes, it is.
All right, but you have to meet a bunch of conditions if you want to do that.
Correct.
All right. And I think you testified that they meet a lot of the conditions, but they don't meet all of the conditions. Right?
That's fair, yes.
All right. So if somebody wants to build something that's permitted, but they can't meet all the conditions to do that, is there any way they can seek relief before a zoning hearing board?
Objection calls for legal
I
solution.
think it's
He's an
pretty
expert.
obvious. It's pretty obvious. He's a zoning expert. He can answer the question if he knows.
The remedy would be with the zoning hearing board requesting a variance
A variance.
from any sections that can't be met.
Okay. But there's no variance before this board, is that correct?
No, the application is strictly for a special exception.
Based on whether a mid-rise apartment building is of the same general character as a mid-rise apartment building.
I think I'll be the first one to admit I was a little confused by that as well. This is an application for a mid-rise apartment building, which is a permitted use in the shopping center district.
And the township has set certain requirements if you want to build a mid-rise apartment building, correct?
Correct. And the application does not meet all of those requirements.
And you could ask for a waiver of some of those requirements, right?
Objection. It's all leading questions.
I understand that. We're going to let him answer that question.
The applicant could request a variance or variances from those sections.
But they haven't done that here.
No.
No further questions.
Mr. Kaplan.
Mr. Amy, let's go back. Keystone came to the township. Keystone proposed the first draft of this ordinance, correct?
Correct.
And Keystone showed you that the office building could be converted into 150 apartment units, didn't it?
Yes, they did.
And the ordinance that you adopted allows an existing building to be converted into 150 apartments, doesn't it?
As a high-rise apartment use, yes.
What, if any, studies did you undertake, or did the township undertake, in considering whether or not to adopt this ordinance? When I say this ordinance, I'm talking about the ordinance we're talking about.
1686?
Yeah. What studies did the township engage in to determine the propriety of allowing that office building to be converted to an apartment building?
I am not aware of any specific studies that were done.
Do you recall your testimony in the prior application of Crete?
Most of it.
Do you remember, and if you want me to refresh you, I'll get the pages out, but that when I asked you about whether the township should take the recommendation of the 2040 comprehensive plan and allow an apartment building, you said that numerous studies would have to be taken in order to justify that. Do I remember your testimony correctly?
I believe you. That is correct, yes.
And you talked about demographic studies. Were there any demographic studies done before that ordinance was adopted?
No, there were not, but if you're looking at ordinance 1686, there are studies required to be submitted with the conditional use application, which include fiscal studies, which includes demographics, which includes transportation studies, and which includes sewer studies.
But your testimony before, in the last hearing, was about the township undertaking those types of studies before it changed the zoning, didn't it?
I believe that that was consistent with my testimony, yeah. But the ordinance was adopted without doing additional studies.
Yeah.
Correct.
No traffic study was done before that ordinance was adopted?
No, but as I said, traffic studies are required as part of any development or any application under ordinance 1686.
I totally understand that. I'm making a
Just so
point
we're on the
that
same
in
page.
your, I want to see whether you're, I'm making the point that when you testified before, you told us that in order for the township to implement the recommendations in the 2040 comprehensive plan, that there should be apartment buildings here. You said you couldn't answer that. There would have to be studies done before that zoning change was made. Am I remembering that
I'm
correctly?
going to object. I think A, he's asked and answered. B, this is irrelevant. There's no validity challenge here. Again, this is they've chosen to bring a special exception application.
We'll let him answer this question, and then we'll move on.
I think, as I already said, there were no studies done.
So when what investigation or study was done by you or the township to determine whether the IKEA building in its present condition, after sitting there for a dozen years, is in condition where it could be converted to an apartment building? What study was done?
There was no study done.
An objection to a concept that a study needs to be done. Again, it's not a validity challenge to this ordinance.
Overruled. Question was asked and answered.
Was an analysis done of the IKEA building to determine whether its present structural configuration could feasibly be converted, could feasibly support an apartment building that had units similar to what you saw Keystone present? Was
Yeah.
any analysis done of that?
I'll object again, asked and answered, and also this is not a validity challenge to this
This has got nothing to do with a validity challenge. They're here telling us that we have to, if we want to build an apartment building, we have to fit into the new requirements.
Or you could ask for a variance.
Overruled.
Let's go ahead.
Please.
Question, but was an analysis done of a IKEA building to determine whether its present instructional configuration could feasibly be converted, could feasibly support an apartment building that had uses similar to what you saw Keystone present? Was any analysis done of that?
And the answer is no.
Did anybody from the township go into the IKEA building to determine what its condition was?
No.
So coming back to the first part of your testimony here tonight, we're in agreement that in order to take advantage of this new ordinance, 1686, Crete would have to convert the IKEA buildings into a mid-rise or a high-rise building.
Correct.
And if it can't convert the IKEA buildings into a high-rise or a mid-rise building, based on this ordinance, it cannot develop any apartments on the mall site, right?
Well, they could, just like any other developer, they could request a variance from this ordinance.
So I hear you, but read my question back, please, and give me a yes or no answer, and then if you want to make a speech, that's fine, but I want a yes or no answer to that question.
Well, hold on. Let's read back the question, please.
And if it can't convert the IKEA buildings into a high-rise or a mid-rise building based on the ordinance, it cannot develop any apartments on the mall site, right?
Without relief. Right.
So the answer is, just so we're clear on the record, correct, Mr. Kaplan, you're correct. And if you wanted to do it, you'd have to get a variance.
That objection is sustained. Not every single question is a absolute yes or absolute no. He said, you're correct, Mr. Kaplan, without relief.
Fine.
Let's leave it at that.
Just so there's absolutely no question. Now, you're familiar, from your experience, what the standard of obtaining a variance in Pennsylvania is, aren't you?
Yes.
And wouldn't you agree with me that the variance that you're talking about here, if we had to get a variance from the provision that if we want to build an apartment building, mid-rise or high-rise, we also we're required to do it in or on an existing office building, the variance we would need would be a use variance, wouldn't it, Mr. Amy?
That's a good question, Mr. Kaplan. I think you could argue that it may not be a use variance.
It's not a dimensional variance.
It's not a dimensional variance,
So-
but it doesn't rise to the level of a use variance because the use is permitted.
No, the only use that's permitted under this ordinance is
Objection is testimony.
Yeah, ask him.
Okay. Mr. Amy, I don't agree with you. Don't you agree that the only way to build an office, an apartment building on this property is to build it on or in an existing office building? And if you don't have an existing office building, you can't build the building.
Without relief.
Without relief, that's where we were.
That's where we were.
But what we're talking about is a use, a conversion of an existing building into a mid-rise or high-rise building. None of that is dimensional.
Let him finish. I assume you're framing a question,
Yeah.
Mr. Kaplan.
None of that is dimensional. None of that relief would be dimensional. It's all about something other. It's to the essence of the use, isn't it?
I don't necessarily agree with that. The use is permitted. Mid-rise apartment buildings are permitted in the shopping center district. That's clear. That's black and white in the ordinance.
So we're in agreement that a mid-rise building can be permitted in this district. We're in agreement on that.
Correct, subject to conditions.
No, not subject to conditions. As a primary requirement of that building must be converted, must be the result of a conversion of an existing building, correct?
That is one of the conditions.
That is the primary condition in the operative section that allows the high-rise or mid-rise, isn't it?
Along with that, what you refer to as an operative section, is a requirement for a conditional use here.
Yeah, okay. Not, but we're talking about getting a variance. I'll strike that. So if we now turn to, or if we continue to talk about a variance, you're aware that Preet owns the rest of the mall, right?
Yes.
So Preet would have to come in, whether you call it a dimensional variance or I call it a use variance, it would have to prove under Pennsylvania standards that it cannot use the property that it owns for the purpose for which it's zoned in order to meet the standard to get a variance. Isn't that right?
Objection is a legal conclusion.
Oh, he's asking him overruled. He can answer that question.
This is a specific property. The property that's being proposed in your application for mid-rise apartments is a specific property.
No, it's not. That's not what we're asking for.
It was in your opening statement, is that it's a 4.37 acre property.
No, my opening statement was that that's a 4 point whatever it is, and it combines with the rest of the center and is allowed to be combined under the zoning ordinance. But come back to my point. Whether it's a 4.7 acre piece or it's the whole 70 acres, if Preet wants to put an apartment building in that location and there's no building to convert, it must prove that it cannot use that 4 acre piece for any other use, correct?
It essentially has to show that that property is valueless without a variance.
But we know that on 4 acres on that property, that Preet could build another restaurant, right?
Objection is
Overruled.
I suppose they
It's
could.
hypothetical.
That would be a question for Preet.
No, we're talking about physically. You wrote this ordinance. You've told us that if we want to do high-rise, we have to do it the way you want on a building. And if we don't want to follow your rules, we have to get a variance.
Well, first of all, it's not my rules.
Well, okay, you participated in the drafting of this.
Participated in the drafting is a far cry from it being my rules.
So, if that's important, I apologize. We have a 4 acre piece of ground in the middle of the shopping center. It would be possible to take a duplicate of the Shake Shack or the Benihana's or Redstone and build one of those types of buildings on that 4 acres, wouldn't we?
It would also be possible.
Let him answer. Let him answer.
You're asking me a hypothetical question. It most likely would be possible, yes. Now, can I?
What stops you from
Yeah,
saying?
hold on.
Let him explain his answer.
Let him explain his
Nothing to stop you from making an argument that particular location, as isolated as it is from the access points and from the rest of the mall, is much better suited and could be developed in a more reasonable and for a variety of reasons way as some sort of residential use. That's your argument to make, not mine, but I'm just illustrating that there's an argument there.
So you're telling me we have to have a variance if we want to build a new residential building there?
Under this ordinance, yes.
And you're telling me that we have to get a variance, right?
That's exactly what I'm telling you. Yes.
And you're telling me that you agree with the Pennsylvania law that you've got to prove it's a hardship. And to prove a hardship, you said it before, you've almost got to prove it's valueless. That's what you've said so far, isn't it?
That's what I've said so far.
Thank you. Helen, let me go back to another point. I think I know your answer, but you required, I apologize, Ken, the ordinance requires or limits a mid-rise building, a mid-rise apartment in a converted building to 50 units, correct?
Correct.
On what basis did council conclude that a mid-rise building should be limited to 50 units? What was the rationale for that?
An objection, this is not a validity hearing on this.
Overruled.
I'm not aware of the rationale. That section or that particular provision was in the original draft when it was presented by Keystone's team, and it remained in the original draft. Council approved it.
So if it turned out that the IKEA building, well, let me just go one step further for a moment. Let me show you two pictures. Do you know what exhibit it is?
We're up to A21 is the next exhibit.
Yeah, I think that's right. So I'm going to take, let's make this A22.
Well, he's making that A22. The next one's A21.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A21 should be your next exhibit,
Okay.
yeah.
So, Ken, I'm going to give you this. I'm not sure I've got it. No, that would be great, thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to...
Yeah, no, that's good.
This must be the office building that convert.
This is the Keystone building.
Keystone Building?
Yes.
That's me going to church.
Then I'm going to mark the second one, A22.
Church of the Mall.
The kid's place.
Yeah, Lego Land. That's just the right corner.
That's in the mall. It's in the mall.
The other entrance, right?
Yeah. I get it. Sir?
This is pre, right? This is what
I don't know what's
well,
what.
this is IKEA. I think Amtrak has offices there.
So Ken, do you recognize A21 as an aerial photograph looking down on the office building, the Keystone building?
Keystone Building, yes.
And do you recognize A22 as same kind of aerial photograph looking down on the IKEA building?
Yes.
So when Keystone came in, they asked for the zoning change. Didn't they show you, or the township, a set of floor plans that demonstrated that that rectangular shape of the office building was inviting to or susceptible to the conversion to an office building, to an apartment building?
They may have shown a plan like that to the township, they did not show it to me.
So, okay.
I was not involved in that part of any
Okay.
discussion.
Well, from your experience, isn't that rectangular building susceptible structurally, shape-wise, to conversion into an apartment building?
Objection to the relevance of the question. Again, this is not a validity challenge against ordinance 1686.
No, but you said, but we've been told that this ordinance was designed so that we could convert the IKEA building into a mid-rise or a high-rise building. That's what your testimony is. And I have the right to question Ken about how the township came to that conclusion.
We'll overrule the objection.
I'm sorry, would you read it back again?
It's that little triangle. That's the building.
Question, all right, well, from your experience, isn't that rectangular building susceptible structurally shape-wise to conversion into an apartment building?
The rectangular building, you're referring to the rectangular building as the Keystone Building.
I am.
Is a regularly shaped building. It probably could more easily be adapted.
Thank you. Now look at 822, which is the IKEA building, or, well, Seth tells me it's one building. To me, it looks like two buildings, but it's a pretty odd-shaped conglomeration of buildings, isn't it?
It's an unusual shape. It's an irregular shape.
Yes. And I know it's not your expertise, but do you have any conceivable idea of how the IKEA building would be converted into an apartment building?
Objection to relevancy, and he just said it's not his area of expertise.
We'll let him answer if he can.
The only answer I would offer is that it is an existing building. It's an irregular building, but with some creativity, and you certainly have some creativity on your team, with some creativity, I don't have any doubt that it can be converted.
Now, let's suppose for a moment that either because structurally it can't be converted into an apartment, or that it's not in sufficient structural condition to support an apartment building, an apartment, or for any other physical reason that the IKEA building cannot be converted. Let's make that as an assumption. If that assumption is correct, why isn't it that, strike that, why, if the IKEA building cannot be converted into an apartment building, and we wanted to build an apartment building in the same location, wouldn't that be a building of the same general character as the now to be converted IKEA building?
That would be an argument to make to the zoning hearing board as part of your variance application.
Well, I'm asking you, you're an expert here, you're giving all these opinions. I ask you again, why isn't that applicable?
Ask and answer A, and B, it's the final legal conclusion. That's his whole application is it's the same general character.
To the extent that he's an expert in planning and zoning, he can answer the question if he can. Let him answer.
Can you read that back, please, Paul?
I think that's a very good idea.
It's always better than asking the same question the second time, and then the two questions don't go together.
Okay, well, the one part, I'm asking you, you're an expert here giving all these opinions. I'm asking you again, why doesn't why isn't that applicable? Asked in the objection. Want me to go previous to that?
Yeah, before that.
Please.
back to this question, where you go, now let's suppose for a moment that either because structurally it cannot be converted into an apartment or that it is not in sufficient structural condition to support an apartment building, or for any other physical reason that IKEA building cannot be converted. Let's make that as an assumption. If that assumption is correct, why isn't it strike that? Why, dash, dash, if the IKEA building cannot be converted into an apartment building and we want it to be an apartment building on the dash, dash in the same location, wouldn't that be a building of the same general character as the now to be converted IKEA building?
Keystone Building, man.
Now to be converted.
Keystone.
Keystone Building, it should read.
Yeah.
You just said IKEA.
He did that twice.
He said IKEA Building, yeah. That's,
We did say IKEA building.
Chair said that to me, and
I know
He
he was
means
saying
yes,
to you, I
meant
know.
Keystone
I would think if it.
Why is it-
all right. I have a suggestion.
So I have to say what he said.
Let's re-ask that question in a simpler way, if that's possible. Because that was a very confusing question. Even hearing it again, it was difficult to get the gist of it. We got to get our buildings right.
Okay, I will try. I've been trying to get this question down all day, trust
I hear
me. So if we assume, Ken, that the IKEA building cannot be converted for any reason, and proposes the building that it's now proposed, a mid-rise building, wouldn't that mid-rise building be of the same general character as the Keystone building that is now going to be converted into an apartment building?
Well, the Keystone building is a high-rise apartment building, so there's a difference between the high-rise apartment versus the mid-rise apartment. But to the extent that they would both be apartment buildings, they are both apartment uses.
And our building would be of the same general character as the Keystone building.
Well, I think it would be an apartment. If that constitutes of the same general character, that's a conclusion you would need to reach. It would be an apartment building.
I have no further questions.
Redirect?
Yeah, please, just on that last point, is there any difference between an apartment building, if you convert an old office building, or you build a new apartment building? Those are both apartments, correct?
At the end of the day, the use is apartment, whether it's mid-rise or high-rise. The use is apartment.
The identically same use.
It's the same use.
Which is permitted
It's
by
not
the ordinance.
substantially similar, it's the same.
Right. It's not of the same general character, it's the same.
It is the same.
Exact same.
Yes.
And council has said you can build apartments in this district, correct?
Correct.
As long as you meet the conditions.
Correct.
Are you done?
I am.
Recross?
Yeah. Again, it's not the exact same use that is permitted under the ordinance. The only thing that is permitted under this ordinance is a apartment building that results from the conversion of an existing office building. That's different than a building that's built from scratch, isn't it?
Well, it is different. Getting there is different, but the end result is still an apartment building.
You call it getting there. I call it a requirement. Getting there is a requirement. That requirement is you can only do that mid-rise or high-rise if you have an existing office building that's being converted. Well, we can agree on that, can't we?
Absolutely.
And somebody else will make the ultimate decision whether the two are of the same general category.
Sounds good. Redirect?
So that's what a zoning code is, right? A series of requirements?
It is. Zoning code identifies permitted uses and then conditions that need to be met in order to avail yourself of those uses.
And if you need a waiver of some of those requirements, what happens?
And you would go to this board and request a variance.
Thank you.
Riri Cross, Mr. Kaplan? Didn't
It's
think,
only going to be the same.
didn't think so. Did not think
And I
so.
move the admission of my 2 weeks of.
No objection.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
They'll be accepted. I didn't know if you moved all your other exhibits previously.
Oh.
Well, because I was going to say, well, A21 and A22 will be accepted, but I don't know about A1 through A20.
You're right.
There's no objection pending, I mean, obviously, the comprehensive plan, I'm not sure the relevance, but I accept for what it is.
All right,
I'll do it again.
A1 through A, again, you do it.
Oh, wait, I did go through all of these.
Yes, you went through them all. I'm trying to figure out whether you moved them for,
Now, what if I didn't, what's the difference?
well, that's what I was saying, just do it again, just,
Yeah.
yeah.
I moved the admission of all my exhibits.
Okay, they'll be, A1 through A22 will be admitted, and T1 and T2 will be admitted. Board questions for Mr. Amy. Dave, you want to go down the line there? Or you want to go down the line and start with Ms. Leddick?
Ms. Leddick, do you have any questions?
Nothing. I have no question.
Mr. Higgins?
No questions.
Mr. Daly?
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Aprile?
I do have a question. I don't understand how the ordinance was approved. Can you explain that?
In what sense? It was approved by council. I wouldn't have had anything to do with that.
But it was written, it sounds like it was written for the Keystone building.
It was written at the request of Keystone, but it wasn't written to only address Keystone. It was written to address the entire shopping center district.
Okay? No more questions.
I don't have any questions at this moment. Thank you.
I don't either. Any other witnesses tonight, Mr. Newsom?
No.
Okay. Now we just need to, as we agreed previously, we'll continue this to September 18th, and between now and then, we'll get an October date, and we'll get it on the books. Do you anticipate that that is the last necessary hearing?
It's certainly our last witness.
Okay, one witness. Okay.
You're going to put the sewer, who you putting on?
I think it'll be Bill Palin is his name. He works with, well, actually, depending on the date, we might ask Alan to testify. Alan had a conflict with the irregular date, so it'll probably, hopefully actually be Alan Mason, but either that or somebody from Carroll. But again, we'll send that stuff before.
I have to hear his testimony.
Okay.
Before I say absolutely,
It's just a
you know what we want.
wishful thinking.
Before we wrap up, can I ask one general question when we have you here? I don't know if it's a fair question to ask or not, but do you, in your expert opinion, do you have any recommendation on what would be best served in that space that is vacant right now?
Where the IKEA
The
office
IKEA
is?
building. Yeah, like, and you're planning, like, nothing, just in your planning opinion of your expertise, is there something that you would suggest as far as be like, that would be a perfect thing for that?
I hate to object to your question. I'm not sure its relevance, but
I just figured, as an educated citizen, I want to understand, like, is there something that you would say that would work great there?
I'll tell you honestly that residential use makes a lot of sense in that corner. It's far enough away from the access points that you're not going to get retail traffic down into that lower end of the mall property. Residential makes sense. I think residential in accordance with Ordinance 1686 makes better sense. I think that's a reasonable use.
I do have a question, if I may.
Sure.
So my understanding is that Priet seemed to be interested in demolishing the old building and the old office building de novo, but it seems to be the tenor of the argument tonight is you're looking to refurbish it, the old IKEA building, and convert it, so to speak, as is into apartments. Is that correct?
It's not convertible.
Okay.
It's not in shape. Seth testified to that. It sat there, Dominic, how long has it sat there? 15 years?
Wow.
You can object to that.
Probably 15 years. The roof's caved in. Is the roof caved in, Sam?
I don't know. Where's that picture? Tell from that aerial.
The aerial doesn't show it. But, you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Look, the answer to your question is, if we could convert that to something that made sense,
Right.
we wouldn't be fighting.
Right.
It's the right place for an apartment building, but not in this convoluted, this ordinance is clear as day, was adopted for Keystone.
Well, that was my follow-up question, and let's stop there. My follow-up question for Mr. Amy is, Keystone is putting in or proposing 150 apartment units, correct? Section 1101.2D limits any property subject to redevelopment under 1101.2 to 150 units.
Correct.
So as soon as Keystone builds or has their plan filed that gives them rights, at least, is precluded from building one apartment unit.
The way the ordinance is structured, if Keystone is proposing 150 units, which is what they're proposing, and they're currently going through the conditional use process right now, if they get through that and file land development plans and get preliminary approval, then they will have taken 150 units out of the total 300 allowed in the shopping center district.
In the SC district.
The SC district.
Right.
And each property can have a maximum of 150.
If it's a conversion, and only if it's a
I understand that. I'm not going there.
Oh,
I want to know if you can also build one apartment unit on the IKEA site. Is it the same property?
No.
Or are they different properties?
Keystone property is a separate property.
Okay. So the 150 limit does not preclude additional apartment units on the mall site on a different property.
The way the ordinance is structured, assuming Keystone gets preliminary approval and vests themselves in that
All
150
assumed.
units, then there would be 150 units remaining for Creek to develop.
Okay.
And if Creek wanted to build more than that, then they'd have to ask for a variance.
Then they would need relief from that cap of 300.
Understood.
Set by council.
Okay.
Can't Preet only build those if they're rehabbing an existing building?
It's two
Yes.
reliefs.
Well, without relief, correct.
Two
Yes.
separate reliefs.
So they can't build 150 unless they're rehabbing something or get relief.
Correct.
They could seek a variance before the zoning hearing
Right.
board and say.
Right.
And we know that's the argument. We know that's
But,
the understood.
They can't. I mean, if they need to build it closer to the property line, if they need to build it closer to the street. I mean, it's like that guy with the shed, right? He came in with a special exception, and he said, no, it's a variance. You're building a big shed, but he came up with a hardship, and you approved. I mean, that's just how the system works, right? If you said anything is the same general character, then the limits that council set would never be there, right? A pool close to the borderline is the same general character as a pool.
But the applicant's dealing with the ordinance as written. And if there's an argument that the ordinance as written might have a different result than you're positing, then that argument can be made.
I don't understand one thing. I don't understand, Ken, why when this ordinance was done, if you didn't want us to have this argument, why didn't council remove the of the same general character, or put something in there that
Right,
of
that's what
the
I'm saying.
same
It's still
general
there.
character,
Yeah, but it's
wouldn't be
the same
used.
character, it's an apartment. You can build an apartment, you
Listen,
don't want to convert, you
that's
can
the
ask for a
first, the
variance.
first argument is it the same general, can the exact same thing be of the
Right.
same general character?
It's gotta be
We
that,
understand,
right?
I know that's a fascinating legal argument, but, all right. Is there a motion to continue this hearing to Monday, September 18th at 7 o'clock PM at the Greater Plymouth Community Center?
I'll make that motion, Mr.
Well,
Solicitor.
thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're continued to September 18th.